Shalom, shalom. It's your brother Dunal. We're back again. Me, the brother Azrael, brother Isaiah, with an interesting one today. Shabbat shalom to all those that celebrate the Shabbat on today. Today is Saturday. Um, was gonna get the date, but it's Saturday, right? uh, but without further ado, man, giving all honor and glory to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We do so by way of his son, who came and gave his life for the nation of Israel, right? The whole nation, right? And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. The title of today's video is going to be called "The Good Neighboring Samaritan," right? Now, colloquially, why it's known as the Good Samaritan, the parable of the Good Samaritan. I put the neighboring thing in there because we're going to touch on that a little bit too. That is within the parable as well, and I think it's kind of interesting and important to highlight. Right, we're going to start out with the book of Luke, chapter 10. Let me see, and I'm gonna revert this back just because I like it this way. But if one of the brothers could read that on the screen for me.
God, this is Luke 10 and 29, and it says, "But he, willing to justify himself, said unto Jesus, and who is my neighbor?"
Right, man. So Christ is telling him to do good to his neighbor, and this man who was just asked, what I'm saying, how can I enter into to life, and asking all these various questions, man. One of his questions was, who is my neighbor? Right? That was one of his questions. Let's see what Christ says, right? He answers with a parable, right?
God, verse number 30, "And Jesus answering said, A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment, and wounded him, and departed, leaving him half deaf."
Right, man. So a man was traveling, right, from Jerusalem to Jericho, right? So Jerusalem to Jericho would be from the country of Judea into the country of Samaria, right?
Verse 31, "And by chance there came down a certain priest that way, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side."
Now this is important, right? It says while he was traveling there, a priest passed by his way, right? Now what are the priests, right? What house would they belong to, right? They typically would belong to the Levites, right? The sons of Aaron, right? So it says one of the sons of Aaron passed him by, right? And it says when he saw him, he passed by on the other side, right? To draw this in your mind, it would be like a homeless person was on this side of the street, right? And to avoid him, you took the other side of the street. This is what this son of Aaron or this priest did in passing, right? And keep in mind, we're talking about who is your neighbor. So in Leviticus, right, we've gone over this plenty of times where it says, thou shalt not hate thy neighbor in your heart, the brother in your heart, neighbor, right? And we went into how that brother in that situation and that neighbor in that situation were both Israelites. We went into the CEB, right? We went into some of the history and we went into the context to show how the neighbor and the brother were Israelites, right? That was in the Old Testament. This is something in the New Testament, right? And this is something that somebody might bring up in Luke, where it says, "Who is my neighbor?" And it starts to mention these Israelites, right? One of them being the son of Aaron, or a priest who walked the long way around to ignore this man that needed help, right? So this is where we at right now, Luke 10 and 31. Let's go to the next verse.
Verse 32, "And likewise a Levite, when he was at the place, came and looked on him, and passed by on the other side."
Now it's talking about a Levite, right? Now we know that the priests were Levites, but not all the Levites were priests. So it's making a distinction here: a priest, right, the son of Aaron, and then a Levite. Both of these, right, would be considered to be what? They would be considered to be a part of the nation that was among the Jews, right? Which you got the Judah, you got Benjamin, and you got Levites, right? So it's making a notion here of who is your neighbor, right? And what Christ is trying to say here, spoiler alert, what he's trying to say here is it's not just everybody that's a Jew, right? That's your neighbor, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, right? That's why he mentioned the priest. He mentioned the Levite, right? He said came and looked on him and passed by the other side. So he passing by too, right? Watch this.
Verse 33. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him.
Man. He said, but a certain Samaritan, right? Now keep in mind the journey from Jerusalem to Jericho is from Judea to Samaria, right? Now in his journey, he passed up some Jews, and then a Samaritan was actually the one that showed compassion to him, right? In the country of Samaria, right? Keep reading.
Verse 34. And went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him.
Right. So he took real good care of him, right? And it's a certain man that's doing this, right?
Verse 35. And on the morrow when he departed, he took out 2 pence and gave them to the host, and said unto him, Take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay thee.
Right. Right. This is good stuff, man. This is good stuff. Now, as I'm reading this, more revelations start to appear to me. And man, who the man calls Jesus, he's such a wise person, to where, man, he really has a monopoly on this book, and he really knows what he's talking about, and he knows what he's teaching, right? So the man is telling him, pretty much giving him, he said, take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay thee, right? And so the man is showing his gratitude. And this is amazing, man. If you guys just think that, what does this parable remind you of, right? What does this parable remind you of? A certain situation that Christ himself went through, right? Remember at the beginning of Luke, the parable started by saying a certain man, right, went to all these places, right? Or he was, he was down bad, and a certain man went on this journey. This is amazing. I ain't gonna lie. I'm sorry, man. I'm just coming to these things. I want to rewind real quick, right? Read Luke 10 and 33 from the top one more time. Anybody?
Luke chapter 10 and 33. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed.
Certain Samaritan, right? As he journeyed, came where he was. Man, this is crazy, man. Right? This is crazy. It's crazy, man. All right, we're gonna keep reading. I'm gonna try to put it together, right? Right. And on the morrow when he departed, he took out 2 pence, right? And said, I'll repay thee. Now read that for me. Luke 10 and 36.
Verse 36. Which now of these 3 thinkest thou was neighbor unto him that fell among the thieves?
Which one do you guys think was the neighbor? Right? I mean, it's a no-brainer. It wasn't the son of Aaron, the priest. It wasn't the Levite, right? But it was the Samaritan. The Samaritan. And one thing I did not ever catch while reading this parable ever was the fact that when he said Samaritan, my mind automatically thought it was a man, or thinks it's a man, right? Now that's a parable. But as you read through the scriptures, you start to realize this parable is that certain man he was talking about that went on a journey, right? And was treated bad by the Levites and the priests, right? But wasn't treated bad by the Samaritan. Who does that sound like? What he's talking about himself this whole time. It says a Samaritan. It didn't say it was a man or a woman. But when I show you the account of the time Christ actually ran into a Samaritan, you're gonna be like, dang, what in the world is going on? Right? Watch this.
Verse 37. And he said, he that showed mercy on him. Then said Jesus unto him, Go and do thou likewise.
Go and do thou likewise, right? Christ is showing us, hey, look, man, it's just not the ones with notoriety that are your neighbors, right? But it's the ones that without notoriety that can help you the most, right? and that there are brothers and our neighbors as well, right? Let's go to the book of John, chapter 4. At this point, you probably already know what situation I'm talking about, but let's read it, man, because when it starts to match up, man, it's just amazing. I ain't gonna lie. Because keep in mind now, in Luke, he said a certain man took a journey from Judea to Samaria, and on his journey, some people passed him up, and some people took care of him. Right? Let's start at verse. This is crazy, man. This is crazy. Let's start at verse 1. This is crazy. This is crazy, man. Let's start at verse 1.
Con, this is the book of John, chapter 4, and verse number 1. It says, when therefore the Lord knew how the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, verse 2, though Jesus though Jesus himself baptized not, but his disciples.
Right.
Verse number 3, he left Judea and departed again unto Galilee. And
right,
he must
go ahead.
And he must needs go through Samaria.
Look at this, man. Right now, if you read before this, you know Christ, he must need to go to Galilee because he was being persecuted by the Pharisees, the chief priests, right? The Levites, they was doing them bad. And he had to go from where he left Judea, the country is Judea, and where is he going through? Samaria. But the parable he gave to this young man, I just found it coincidental, where he says a certain man had to make a journey from Judea to Samaria, right? I just found it a funny coincidence. Can you read verse 5 for me?
Verse number 5, then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar.
I'm gonna click on this real quick. Read that from the top one more time.
John 4 and 5. Then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph.
Right, man. So Sychar, if you do your research, right, this is the Greek way of saying Shechem, right? If you know anything about Shechem, let me show you real quick. This is a map. It would be right here. Right here is Sychar, right? Fact check me, Google me, all that, right? It's the same thing. Shechem. Mount Gershom, right here, is where they're meeting at, right? Where he met this Samaritan woman, right? That's where he's going. It says that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Not only did Jacob give to his son Joseph, right? What was significant about Mount Gershom and Shechem? It's said to be the same exact place that Isaac almost got sacrificed at. Not only that, we're gonna read some more significance with Mount Gershom or Shechem or Sychar, right? Watch this.
John 4 and 6. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour.
Now, keep in mind, if you have any idea about history, this is why it's important to dive deep when you're reading. And this goes over a lot of people's heads, a lot of colloquial Christians, right? When you start to read and you're talking about going into Samaria and the Samaritan, the good Samaritan, and what about the Samaritan woman at the well, not knowing that Sychar is in Samaria and what happens to be in Samaria. At this point, I know we make the connection later on in this situation, but if we were really studied, we would make the connection back when it says that he was in Sychar, right? Because then we would know, oh, he's in Samaria and Jacob's well is in Samaria. It would already have clicked by now. I know we make it later on, which is perfectly fine, but this is how important studying and knowing your history goes, right? It says, now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being weary with his journey, he was weary in his journey. Man, the parable, I mean, of course, the parable is not going to be a spitting image identical, right? But that's the things that were happening were, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. He was weary for his journey. He sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour, right? Keep reading.
Verse 7. There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water.
There
Jesus said
cometh
unto
a
her,
woman of Samaria, right? In the parable, it says a certain Samaritan came by, right? And he says, what?
to draw water. Jesus said unto her, give me to drink.
Give me to drink. I am weary. Aid me, right? What did that certain Samaritan do in the parable, right? It bandaged the man up, gave him food and drink, right?
Verse 8, for his disciples were gone away unto the city to buy meat.
Right.
Verse number 9, then said the woman of Samaria unto him, how is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans.
Right, man. So now is where we kind of get into it. It says, she's pretty much saying, like, how can you expect me to help you? I'm a Samaritan, right? And you're a Jew, right? I find it funny because in the parable, the guy asked him, who's my neighbor? In this same situation, he's teaching her the same thing he taught the boy in the parable, that, hey, even though you're a woman of Samaria and I'm a Jew, you're still my neighbor. I'm still your neighbor. Please give me to drink. He's teaching the same exact thing in both situations here, right? He says, being a Jew asks to drink of me. And I want to make another point too, right? That at this point, we know that every party knew that there was a distinction between the people that lived in Samaria and the people that lived in Judea, right? One word was mostly the northern kingdom, because the people that settled in Samaria, again, fact check me if you want to, we're probably not going to go into it in here, and we have done videos on it, but the people that settled in Samaria were the northern kingdom, right? And they chiefly were the ones that were left over from the Assyrian captivity that had conquered Samaria, right? Now within Samaria, you had certain cities. Let's go back to this map real quick. You had certain cities all in Samaria, right? Look at this ancient map of Samaria now, right? All of these cities were in Samaria, but you got to understand some of them were occupied by Assyrians. Some of them were occupied by Canaanites. Some of them were occupied by Israelites, right? Over here where Mount Gershom is, where Shechem is, or Sakar, this was all Israelites right here. Of course, you got at this time this ancient map of Samaria, Nazareth was within its borders as well, right? So you had to understand, and look at all these cities and towns, right? So there's a lot of cities and towns in Samaria. And I brought that up for one point in the future that's going to come up in this lesson, right? But keep reading. Did you finish this one?
Time. Verse 10, Jesus answered and said unto her, if thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that thou said to thee, give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water.
Right, man. It said, if thou knewest the gift of God, right? The crazy part is, man, when you read the New Testament, the gift of God, right? Of course, we know, the bigger picture is he gave his son, his only begotten son. But the gift of God really is a way to repent, right? And bigger than that, it's the breaking of the middle wall of partition, bringing both the sticks back together, right? So he says, if thou knewest the gift of God and who it is that saith to thee, give me to drink, right? I know bigger picture is saying like, oh man, if you knew I was the King of Kings and Lords of Lords, but the same thing right here. If you knew who said, give me to drink, that I'm your neighbor, that I'm your brother, that the gift of God sent sent by somebody to break down the middle wall of partition, right? Thou would have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water, right?
Verse number 11, then the woman said unto him, sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water?
All right. Now it's starting to get what's the word I'm looking for? Allegorical, right?
Verse 12, Art thou greater than our father Jacob?
And this is where we the light bulb went off in our heads for a lot of us, right? When he's talking to the Samaritan woman, and somebody might have hit you with, well, okay, but what about the woman at the well and this, that, and the third? And as you come into this truth and you're starting to read, like, it's got to make sense somehow. This is where the light bulb clicks off for a lot of us, that she mentions that where they're at, their father Jacob, who is the patriarch of the Israelites, they're sitting at his well, right? And that is in Samaria, right? So she says, art thou greater than our father Jacob? Letting us know that they're related. And the light, I'm led to believe that the light bulb probably went off in her head at this time too. That, hey, when she said our father, I mean, like, this man's trying to tell me that we shouldn't be beefing. There shouldn't be a reviling between the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, right? And his children and his cattle. She's pretty much saying, like, are you above all of that? Right? But that's the whole point in general, though, that that our Father himself and his children, that's us, all of us, y'all and us, right?
Con. Jesus answered and said unto her, whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again.
Right? Whosoever shall drink of this water shall thirst again. Right? And that's twofold. I want to believe that's twofold. Why do I say this? One is saying the actual physical water. If you drink of it, right, you're gonna thirst again. But all place where they're at, because if you know something about Samaria and Mount Gershom and Shechem, and where the place is called Sychar, this is where the northern kingdom Israelites would go to worship. This is where their temple was, right? So not only is he saying, hey, just this physical water, but he's saying this place that you have set up as your temple, because that's where she went to go to. You can come here all you want to, but you're still going to thirst. You need something better. Remember, the blood of goats and lambs wasn't sufficing us no more. Right? Watch this. Keep reading.
Verse 14. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. He's
saying, hey, look, man, the water that you get from here, you're going to be thirsting again. But the water that you receive from me, right, is going to be within inside you, right? The sacrifice that I'm going to make is going to be everlasting, right? Watch this.
John chapter 4 and verse 15. The woman said unto him, Sir, give me this water that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw.
Right? She's begging for this water now. Like, what are you talking about? You got that good stuff.
Verse 16, Jesus said unto her, Go, call thy husband and come hither.
Right? And everybody know this part where he's saying, hey, look, man, I know you got some husbands, whatever, It's not really the point, but you can go ahead and read that.
Verse 17. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband.
Right.
Verse 18. For thou hast had 5 husbands, and him whom thou now hast is not thy husband. In that sayest thou truly.
Right.
The woman said unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet.
Because he's letting her know things that, she didn't tell him. Right. And I have my thoughts about those 5 husbands and stuff too, but that's for another video, right? We're gonna get into that later, man. And it has nothing to do with, the way it's a different take, right? I'll say that. But keep reading.
Verse 20. Our fathers worship in this mountain.
What she say? She said, hold. And so now I'm at this point where it's like, maybe she picking up what he been saying this whole time, right? She brings up the place that they're at. Our fathers worship, because if you don't know, right, I encourage you to read some of the prophets at the time when the kingdom split, right? One of the reasons why they were beat, right, was because the Samaritans were thinking like this Samaritan woman, right? It says our father worshiped in this mountain. That's why they built a temple in Shechem, because there was a beef saying that the temple should be in Shechem or Mount Gershom, but the Jews said no, the temple should be in Jerusalem. So you had the Jews worshiping at Jerusalem, and you had the northern kingdom worshiping here, right? There was a big beef. No, we should worship here, right? This is where he said that was going to be promised our land. No, we should worship here where Moses and them anointed the mountain and all of this, right? This is where the big confusion started to come into play, right? What does it say? Live viewer comments show up. Appreciate that. That in Jerusalem, it says, read that from the top one more time.
John 4:20, it says, our fathers worshiped in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship.
Right. So that's what the Samaritans were thinking. It's saying, hey, man, we think that we should be worshiping over here. Right. But watch this.
John 4:21, Jesus saith unto her, woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor
neither
yet
in this mountain, right?
Nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father.
Because they already understand the beef. We know that the northern kingdom worship at this mountain, and they say that this is the true place. The Jews say it's at Jerusalem. With Christ saying, hey, look, both of y'all worrying about the wrong things, right? Both of y'all worrying about these man-made. Matter of fact, let's get that real quick, right? Let's go to Acts 7:44. Before I go there, though, I want to finish reading this out. Let me see if this is the last one. Go ahead and read verse 22.
John 4:22. It says, ye worship ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews.
Right? One more.
Verse 23. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him.
Right, man. So what he's saying is, hey, man, y'all beefing and y'all focusing on the things that you can see with your natural eye. We should worship in Gershom. We should worship in Judea, in Jerusalem, right? He says, man, it's not even about worshiping in Jerusalem. That's why he brought it up. He said it's not about worshiping here in this mountain or in Jerusalem, right? But he says that the true worshipers, if you really want to worship the Most High God, right, what do you have to do? You have to worship in him in spirit, within inside you, because that's where the kingdom lies, within inside you, right? He's a master teacher. Watch this. That's why he said this in Acts, right? Acts 7:44. You start right here.
The book of Acts, chapter 7 and verse 44, it says, our fathers had the tabernacle of witness in the wilderness, as he had appointed, speaking unto Moses, that he should make it according to the fashion that he had seen.
So now they're talking to him like, hey, man, he spoke to Moses about that tabernacle at Gershom where the Samaritans were, right? Watch this.
Verse 45, which also our fathers that came after brought in with Jesus into the possession of the Gentiles, whom God drave out before the face of our fathers unto the days of David.
So they're making an argument like you're talking about this place of worship, right? That was tarnished by the Gentiles. How can y'all believe that that's the place that we need to be at? Right? When we were drove out of that place, that should have been a telltale sign, right? Keep reading.
Verse 46, who found favor before God and desired to find a tabernacle for the God of Jacob.
But God still had they're saying, now that temple y'all got in Gershom in Samaria is trash, but God still saved a remnant of us to find the real place to where we need to put this temple at, right? What else is it saying?
Verse 47, but Solomon built him a house.
But Solomon built him a house. Where did Solomon build that house? In Jerusalem. So now we see that the southern kingdom, right? They're boasting in this house that Solomon built because it's in Jerusalem, right? But who is it speaking? Is this Paul? What is he saying? He's saying the same thing Christ is saying, right? It's not about Mount Gershom. It's not about Jerusalem. What does he say? Acts 7:44. Because we bring this scripture out all the time, but the context is way stronger.
Acts 7:48. Howbeit, the Most High dwelleth not in temples made with hands, as saith the prophet.
Right? He says, howbeit, the Most High doesn't even dwell in temples. Y'all beefing over where we should be worshiping at. That's not even the main thing. They're teaching the same thing. He says, y'all beefing over where we should be worshiping at. That's not even the purpose. God doesn't even dwell in temples. Matter of fact, read this next verse.
Verse 49. It says, heaven is my throne, and earth is my footstool. What house will ye build me, saith the Lord? Or what is the place of my rest?
He's quoting scripture. He's saying, bro, y'all thinking God is in that temple. Y'all thinking God is in that temple. God's not in any of the temples. Y'all thinking about this too carnally, right? It goes on to start mentioning stuff like ye are the temple and stuff like that. The temple is within you, right? The same thing Christ was speaking about, right? Of you must worship him in spirit and in truth, right? This was the driving point, the driving force, right, of what they were trying to teach. And I thought about naming this this title. Was Jesus doctrine the same as Paul's? Because when you start to read, man, they're saying a lot of the same things, bring up a lot of the same principles, right? Now, you might ask yourself this question, since we're talking about the Samaritans, right? And for the longest time, I was trying to, I started out by dissecting this precept, right? And I really couldn't figure out, what really was taking place until I did my digging, right? And I brought forth to my mind some of the things that we just explained, right? But I'm gonna go to Matthew 5 and verse 8, right?
That's Matthew 10.
Yeah, Matthew 10. My bad. We're gonna read through verse 8.
Okay, Khan. This the book of Matthew, chapter 10, starting at verse number 5. Then it reads, it says, these 12 Jesus sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any of the city of the Samaritans enter ye not.
Right, man. Right. And so when you read this, you're thinking like it says, go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any of the cities of the Samaritans enter ye not. Right. Now we understand that what this is talking about, this is actually talking about actual heathens, right? Actual descendants of heathens, right? These Gentiles are actual Gentiles, and these Samaritans are actual Samaritans, right? But let's keep reading.
Verse 6, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Right. And so we understand that those are actual heathens that he's talking about, because why would he preach something and do something totally different? Why would he tell us not to go into Samaria when he literally went into Samaria? Right. So this is how we know that those are talking about actual heathens, and not the Israelites that were in Samaria, just because, like I said, there's a bunch of cities and towns in Samaria, right? And he's literally telling you to stay out the way of the people that, for lack of better terms, are not the children. Stay clear of the dogs, right? And to go to these people that you need to bid to the table to eat, right? Go ahead.
Can you go back to verse 5?
Come on.
But I wanted to just say, he makes it clear that he's not saying not to go into these countries. He's making it clear that there's certain cities that you're not supposed to go to in these countries. That's why it says, into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not, or the way of the Gentiles, go not into the way of the Gentiles. He's making it clear, y'all are still going to be there. I'm still dispersing y'all to go preach the word in these countries. He's just making it clear there's certain places y'all shouldn't be, which a lot of Israelites today need to know there's certain places we should not be. A lot of us, we find ourselves in certain places and thinking that the Lord is on our side. And man, you got to understand there's certain places that we should not be. That's why a lot of us backslide. That's why a lot of us end up in situations that become dangerous and things of that nature. There's certain things we should not be going in the way of. For example, it's holiday season right now. Man, go not in the way of the Gentiles. Don't go. Look, there's certain places and things and times and that we should just not be in. That's all he's saying. So that's why he clears it up in verse 6. When in verse 6 he says, "But go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Right? Go get the sheep, bro. What are you worried about these goats over here for when there's 2 lost sheep over there? Right? And that's what he's saying. He's not saying don't go to the whole country. But Con, I just wanted to point that out.
Come, man, right? And that's clear, and that's one thing that we teach, right? That we believe too, because some people would say it's a contradiction where he says he tells them the Great Commission, right? Go on to all these nations, but on the same hand, he says, don't go in the way of the Gentiles and enter the city of the cities of the Samaritans enter ye not. So it's like, is he contradicting himself? And that's one thing where we explain to people. That's why we know we have the right understanding and interpretation, because like the brother said, he's not saying that he's not sending you out to all these places, but he's telling you to avoid certain places and avoid certain people, right? But he says what? Go rather to what?
Go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, one thing too, right? And this is just me personally, right? When he's sending this commission out, right? He says, go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And he says, go not into the way of the Gentiles and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not, right? When you do your research, let's go back to this map. When you do your research, you understand that there were actually some towns and cities that Jews, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi were living in as well in Samaria, right? And then so knowing that, my mind just in general is like, man, not only are you staying away from the now keep in mind, right? You gotta take this with a grain of salt. Not only are you staying away of the Gentiles and staying away from the cities of the Samaritans, but you're going not to the Samaritan cities that know are right, that are keeping these laws, statutes, and commandments and stuff like that, right? That's not in the way of the Gentiles practicing paganism and stuff like that, but go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? To make that simple, to dumb it down, don't go to your Jew brothers and sisters in Samaria, right? But go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Why would I say that? Because the chapter right before it, right? The very previous chapter in Matthew 9 and 12, this is what he was teaching. All right.
Matthew 9 and 12, and it reads, but when Jesus had heard that, he said unto them, they that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick.
And matter of fact, what was Jesus doing? Let's see. Let's start at verse 10.
Verse 10, and it came to pass, as Jesus sat at meat in the house, behold, many publicans and sinners came and sat down with him and his disciples.
Right.
Verse 11, and when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto his disciples, why eateth your master with publicans and sinners?
Right.
Verse 12, but when Jesus heard that, he said unto them, they that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick.
Come on, man. Right. And what does this situation that Christ was in remind you of, you guys? I'll ask you guys, Brother Isaiah and Azrael. Which situations does it sound like in the Bible?
What you mean? It's like you're looking for a specific situation?
Yeah.
Like when the woman who touched the hem of his garment, or the woman that had an issue of blood?
We'll start from the top one more time. And it says, and it came to pass, as Jesus sat at meat in the house, behold, many publicans and sinners came and sat down with him and his disciples. Right. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto his disciples, why eateth your master with publicans and sinners? And he said, what? They that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick.
Go rather into the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Right. And that's why I went here, because that's the chapter right after this one, right? That's why I'm paralleling the two. But what situation does it sound like that's happening?
Oh, you talking about Matthew 15?
Kinda, right? But I'm thinking about another one that happened in Acts.
Talking about the beef between Paul and Peter.
That too, right? Because one of them was what? Sitting with what? Peter was eating with what?
No, Paul was eating the Gentiles.
Yeah.
Paul was?
Yeah, and Peter was questioning Paul about how he was sitting with the Gentiles.
Right. Paul. And then Peter, he had this vision.
Vision, yeah.
Right? And who did he have the vision of?
What's his name? He just said the name.
Cornelius.
Yeah, Cornelius.
Peter had this vision about Cornelius and his people, right? Where was Cornelius from?
Caesarea.
Cilicia? Or Caesarea, yes.
Caesarea. Where is Caesarea?
Italy.
Right here. Where is Caesarea? In Samaria.
Oh, wait. I'm thinking of
you think it's
Cilicia.
Caesarea is in Samaria. So that would make who? Cornelius or what? A Samaritan. So when you're diving into Acts 10 and they're like, man, we know we don't mess with the Samaritan. That's what they're saying. We know we don't mess with the Samaritans. Remember what the Samaritan woman said at the well? You know we have no dealings. Why would you ask to fellowship and drink with me? Right? But who gave Peter this vision?
The Lord gave Peter this vision.
But Jesus' daddy gave him the same vision that Jesus was trying to fulfill out here. Jesus went to Jesus was in Samaria, came across a Samaritan, did pretty much the same exact thing Peter was sent to do with Cornelius. That was from Caesarea, which is a city in Samaria, which is technically the northern part of Israel, right? Because Samaria is within Israel if you go look on a map, right? But that's to say, the altercation that was happening in Acts 10, while it was so crazy how you can eat with this Samaritan, because that's what he was. He's from Caesarea, a Samaritan. It was the same exact altercation that we were looking at with Jesus and this woman at the well, right? Matter of fact, and I'll end on Acts 10 real quick. Just so
when you said, what does this remind you of? My mind is not making the correlation between them that are sick to Acts 10 and Peter's vision. I was thinking more along the lines of the women that had an issue of blood, or
so you're thinking about like actually sick, but also kind of hit it on the head when he's talking about go rather to the lost sheep, because the lost sheep are the ones that are sick.
Right.
The lost sheep were the ones that were Samaritans, the northern kingdom. Right. Let's go to Acts real quick.
Only reason I wouldn't have thought Cornelius, because was Cornelius really lost?
No, he wasn't lost, but he was what he was doing. He was being a representative for his people in Samaria. That's why I went in Acts 11 when he tells his people they're all rejoicing. Who was rejoicing when he goes back to Caesarea? The Samaritans, right? And we know who the Samaritans are, right? And to make matters worse, now that we know that they're Samaritans, Christ literally said not to go into the cities of the Samaritans. We're only going to certain Samaritans. So if it's a Samaritan that we're dealing with, it's got to be our people, right? Let's go to Acts 10. Hope that wasn't confusing, right? I mean, I don't plan on reading the whole thing. I just want to get a little bits and pieces about what we just talked about, right? Acts 10 and 1.
Acts 10, starting at verse 1, there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian Band.
Right? There was a certain man in Caesarea, right? Caesarea, like we just showed, was in Samaria. It's Caesarea right here on the coast by the Mediterranean Sea, right? It says a devout man, one that feared God with all his house, right, which gave much alms to the people and prayed to God always, right? Um, read verse 3 for me.
Verse 3, he saw in a vision evidently about the ninth hour of the day, an angel of God coming into him and saying unto him, Cornelius. And when he looked on him, he was afraid and said, What is it, Lord? And he said unto him, Thy prayers and thine alms are come up for a memorial before God. And now send men to Joppa and call for one Simon, whose surname is Peter.
Joppa was on the border of Judea and Samaria, right? So it says, send men to the border and call for Peter, right, to come meet you at the border. Keep reading.
He lodged with one Simon, a tanner, whose house is by the seaside. He shall tell thee what thou oughtest to do.
Right.
And when the angel which spake unto Cornelius was departed, he called two of his household servants, and a devout soldier of them that waited on him continually.
All right.
And when he had declared all these things unto them, he sent them to Joppa.
Right. Let's fast forward to Peter, man. Oh, it's right here, verse number 9.
Verse number 9. On the morrow, as they went on their journey and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour.
Right.
And he became very hungry and would have eaten, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance.
Right.
And saw heaven open and a certain vessel descending unto him, as it had been a great sheet knit at the four corners and let down to the earth.
And this is the great, infamous and famous vision of Peter. I say infamous because some people can take it and give it the wrong way, right, and use it as an excuse to eat abominations. Some people look at it for what it actually was, right? But this was the vision that Peter was given. Verse 12.
Wherein all manner of four-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creepy thing, and fowls of the air. And there came a voice unto him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said,
so the Lord saying, Rise, eat, right?
But Peter said, Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean.
He's saying, man, I've never, ate anything common or unclean. Now people would stop and take this like, oh, he's talking about actual food, right? Keep reading.
Verse 15. And the voice spake unto him again the second time, What God hath cleansed, that call not thou common.
Right. It says, what God has cleansed, call that now not uncommon or whatever, right? What says God has cleansed, that call not thou common, right? Meaning don't call it contrary, right? Now, when you think of this thing, right, you have to understand, when has God ever cleansed any of those foods that he made? Never. So off rip, you should know he's not talking about those foods. But and just start to think, get your gears turning, right? He has cleansed a certain group of people, right? And there will always be his people, right? This was done 3 times, right? Now, when Peter doubted himself in the vision, right? Read verse 17 for me.
Verse 17. It says, Now while Peter doubted himself in what Salaki, let me reread this. It says, Now while Peter doubted in himself what this vision which he had should mean, behold, the men which were sent from Cornelius had made inquiry for Simon's house and stood before the gate.
Right.
And called.
So God works kind of funny sometimes, man. He works kind of deliberate like this too, right? He gave him a vision at this time. This was happening as well. A Samaritan man was coming to meet him at the time, right? Let's go to verse. As I said, I don't want to read the whole thing. I just want to get gist, right? Let's read verse 21.
Verse 21. Then Peter went down to the men which were sent unto him from Cornelius and said, Behold, I am he whom ye seek. What is the cause wherefore ye are come?
Keep reading.
And they said, Cornelius the centurion, a just man,
Pay attention.
And one that feared God and of good report among all the nation of the Jews, was warned from God by an holy angel to send for thee into his house.
Now watch this, right? I think this is significant. Some may argue, right? But when I read this, where it says among all the nation of the Jews, right? I put a highlight on that word nation, because that lets me know that it's talking about the southern kingdom when it says the nation of the Jews. The nation of the Jews is the southern kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, right? It's not the nations of the Jews, but that one nation singular is letting me know it's talking about the southern kingdom singular, right? And which lets me know that it's talking about the northern and southern kingdom and not an actual Gentile or actual heathen, right? Keep reading, verse 23.
And to hear words of thee. Verse 23. Then called he them in, Salakia. Then called he them in and lodged them. And on the morrow, Peter went away with them, and a certain brethren from Joppa accompanied him.
Right.
And on the morrow, after they entered into Caesarea, and Cornelius waited for them, and had called together his kinsmen and near friends. And as
So
Peter
read
was
verse 28 for me. Start at verse 28.
jumping
Get
down
to
to
the
verse
point.
28, Acts 10 and 28, it says, and he said unto them, ye know how that it is unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come unto one of another nation.
This is the same thing that the Samaritan woman told Jesus. The same exact thing. You know how it's unlawful for us to have any dealings with each other. You know I can't give you nothing to drink, right? Keep reading.
Con.
Or
Continuing in
also, right? Remember, I just highlighted. Sorry to cut you off, but I just highlighted that it was the nation of the Jews, which is the southern kingdom. Right here, it says to come unto one of another nation. This is talking about that second kingdom, that northern kingdom, nation. Right? Keep reading.
Con. Continuous or finishing out verse 28, it says, but God hath showed me that I should not call any man common or unclean.
And that is the point, right? And so when we're teaching these things, right, especially when somebody comes to us to say that this whole passage is about eating pork, right? The whole vision that Peter sums up is in verse 28. And the thing that he's saying not to call unclean, that God hasn't called unclean, is men, right? And the only men that he said that was going to be holy and separate to him, that was going to be clean, were the Israelites, northern and southern kingdom, right? 28, man, everybody should highlight that as a go-to in Acts 10, right? Because that is the meaning of the vision, right? When you're talking to somebody, whether it be debating, a passionate conversation, an argument, you got contention, you nip it in the bud, just read verse 28. Peter is going to tell you what the vision meant. And a lot of times we explain to people, like, not all the time when you have a vision, that's what it actually means in real life. Like, for instance, somebody might have a dream of, if you have a dream, they say if you have like dreams of fish, that means somebody's pregnant or something like that. I remember when I was growing up, not growing up, but I was in college. I had a bunch of dreams of golden retriever puppies, right? And I looked it up, and it said something about I have a problem trusting people around me, or I have a loyalty problem, right? A lot of times when you have visions of things, it's not because it's telling me I need to go get a golden retriever puppy. You know what I'm saying? It's not because it's saying, hey, you need to go get a goldfish, but these things symbolizes things on this earth, right? And the same thing was happening with Peter. He got shown all these animals, all these abominable animals, but they were standing in representation of men that were called unclean. And God was letting them know, hey, look, people see these people as unclean people, but they're not, right? And so the conclusion of the whole matter was Peter was saying, I know now that I can't call any man common or unclean, right? And if you read the next chapter, you see that they ended up feasting with Peter, right? Cornelius and his people. And now he's sitting down, he's fellowshipping, he's breaking bread with these Samaritans, just like Jesus was, just like Paul was. Because this was the whole meaning of this whole New Testament, was what? To break this middle wall of partition down, right? And bring back the stick of Judah and the stick of Ephraim, right? And Samaria has a big part to play. And that's why I thought it would be important to go into this today. Like I said, man, I didn't want to be too long, but it was a lot of information, man. I hope it wasn't too confusing, right? Any brothers got anything to add?
Can you go to that middle wall of partition precept?
Yeah, where's that in Ephesians? I think it's in Ephesians because this has to do with the circumcision, right? I think. Yeah, Ephesians 2. Ephesians 2 and 14.
Right, the book of
I'll read
Ephesians.
The book of Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 14. For he is our peace, who has made both one and has broken down the middle wall of partition between us, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of commandments containing in ordinances, for to make in himself twain one new man, so making peace. Right? And that he might reconcile both unto God in one body by the cross, having slain the enmity thereby.
You can stop right there. I just wanted to show, because I know a lot of people don't know what what it actually kind of looks like. Because when you hear certain things like Galilee, Nazareth, Caesarea, Judea, and stuff, and then when you start hearing stuff like Samaritan and Gentile, you start thinking, like, oh, they're like far away from where their hometown is and all that. They're talking about Gentile stuff, Colossians, Galatia, all that. So what I'm trying to show right here is just like it literally was a middle wall of partition, right? If you could see Samaria right here, it literally split because right here you have Galilee, Nazareth. We know that. We know Galilee, Nazareth. We know Capernaum, where he was crucified, right? Right here you see the Jordan River all the way down here. You see Jericho right here. More J's. You see Joppa, Bethlehem, Judea, Jerusalem, right? Literally what separates these Jews from up here from these Jews is a middle wall of partition, which is literally Samaria. You see Caesarea and stuff right there. So all Most High wanted, all Christ and Paul and Peter and them was teaching was like, this right here should be a part of all of this. There should be no gaps. That's why when you were seeing Christ, when he's trying to get to Galilee, he had to travel through Samaria. All of this was us in the first place, right? And what happened is these people right here, right? They were living like Gentiles and things of that nature. And they separated themselves. From them. But literally, all of this is just supposed to be our people. It's supposed to be we're supposed to all be, like it says, there's no Jew, no Gentile, no woman, no man, no bond, no free. That's what all of this is supposed to be, right? And I just wanted to show this because I know a lot of times when you're reading it and when you're thinking about it in your head and you can't really see it, you don't know how close everything really was. But literally all this stuff is right by each other, right? Cornelius wasn't from some far land. He's right there, right next to Nazareth, right? The Samaritan woman and everything. I think so right here is kind of like where that well is, right? Kind of like right here. But Judea is right here. So really Judea and Samaria share that little West Bank coast that they call it, right? And so, I mean, it's just everything is literally, they're all right here, man. So it's not far-fetched to understand, hey, when we're reading the New Testament, it's literally family business. Like you read in the New Testament, these names come up, these cities come up because it's family business. They're not talking about all the way over here. They're not talking about all the way over here. They're not talking about all the way over here or over here, right? I mean, of course, you're going to see some names mentioned, right? But like Idumea, Ashkelon, we know that's not us and things of that nature. But it's all family business right here. We see the Samaritans, we see the Galileans, the Nazarenes, the Judeans, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, all that, right? I just wanted to point that out, though.
Con, if you could too, could you bring up one more precept? You already had quoted it. I just want to read it. Ezekiel 37, talking about joining the two sticks. Because there was a part of this lesson earlier. That I was gonna say, man, that's kind of crazy how you're going into that, because even though the overall gist of the lesson wasn't specifically to the conversation encounter I had this week, it was a point in there that was kind of relevant, which when we were talking about how the woman at the well was mentioning, Shalam to be the place where the northern kingdom worship, right, at the temple that they built in the land of Samaria, versus Jerusalem, that the house that Solomon built to the Lord, and how the Jews will advocate for that to be the house of worship. And I quoted Acts 7, 48 and 49 to a friend of mine who he goes to church a lot. His mom and them raised them in church and stuff like that. And he was talking about how, people can't know God if they don't go to church. And I dropped that precept in Acts 7 just to kind of make the point that, sometimes people forget that, like Christ said, one day it won't be this land or this church or that church. It'll be, everybody being joined together in unity, right? But this is why I said I want to read this. Ezekiel 37:19, say unto them, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel and his fellows, and will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in my hand. So reading that to say that's the exact scripture I think about or thought about when right before you quoted it, when Christ was talking about it'll be no more this or no more that. The same way how people get into disputations over which church, or should you go to church, or is it this or that in today's time. I kind of reflect on precepts like these to kind of keep in perspective that the whole point of us doing the work of the Lord, the whole point that a lot of what Paul taught, a lot of what you see that Christ taught, like the brother brought out so eloquently today, is just about joining the people together, right? Just like the brother Azrael just brought up, which was a great point, especially for myself, just realizing how actually close it is, and in a sense, not allegorically, spiritually, but actually physically, how Samaria is almost as a middle wall of partition between Jews, in general. So just a good lesson overall, a lot to devour. Hopefully everyone was edified. I know that I didn't get the parallel from what we read at first, but then it started kicking in. I was like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Man, right? And to piggyback off of that, you got and Christianity has made it even worse. The beef between Northern and Southern Kingdom was one thing, but Christianity has multiplied that beef, right? Because it's not about worshiping at Mount Gershom or in Jerusalem. It's about worshiping at the house, the Potter's house, or Elevation Church, right? Right, and people are so gung-ho about their churches, and we got and so that's the little thing, right? The churches. And then you got something bigger like the branches. Nah, we're supposed to be Baptist. No, we're supposed to be Pentecostal. No, we're supposed to be Catholic, right? And all of these things. And it just took the beef and it made it 10 times more confusing, 10 times more more difficult for us to come in as one, right? And you got all these different Israelites that are lost within this whole mess, right? And it makes it that much harder to show them the truth. Like Christ was saying, like, man, you talking about Gershom, right? And I know you think I'm about to sit up here and be a representative for Jerusalem, but forget both of them. The real worshipers got to be in spirit and in truth.
And Christ was also preaching the destruction of the temple as well. and you know the whole 70 AD and everything. So also when he was talking to the woman at Samaria, and he was saying like, uh, you know, it's the hours come to where y'all won't be worshiping in Jerusalem or worshiping in Samaria. Y'all gonna be persecuted and scattered. Y'all gonna have to worship him in spirit and truth. Y'all beefing over something that can be taken from y'all. This land can be taken from y'all. These temples can be taken from y'all. So why are y'all beefing over something that, you know what I'm saying, that the most high God is not confined to in the first place? Right? The first time Solomon even built a house for the Lord, you know, while he was building it, the Lord was like, for years I've been dwelling in tents, right? So I mean the Lord's, you know, he can do whatever he want to do, right?
Yeah.
You know, house.
And that's why I feel like Acts 7, when we brought it out today, it was just kind of like, dang, man, it really goes to show how important that verse really is when it comes to people truly trying to make a big deal out of, you know, a house of worship, a place of worship, you know, because at the end of the day, like you just mentioned, it's going to be a day where we got to worship him in spirit and truth. We're living in those days where we have to worship him in spirit and truth. We have no temple that, you know, the Lord ordained for us currently to make sacrifices, to truly go and worship at. We are the temple right now. And like the brother Danal did say that in this lesson too. Just point of emphasis. I'm just piggybacking off of what he said, but that's why it was just such a powerful verse to bring out, because people really don't, like, you get the surface level understanding. You just think about it like, yeah, you know, we know that the Lord doesn't dwell in house in church buildings. We're not saying that. But then again, when you really reread that chapter and understand the context, and then you pull from certain verses and certain contexts and chapters and conversations and things that were going on today, parables throughout the New Testament, and you see how kind of like, nah, people really were making this a big deal, you'll get why it was important for that to be said in Acts 7, you know, that the Lord
Man.
doesn't dwell in temples made with hands of men.
Man. And they was making it a big thing. And Christ was like, man, y'all tripping. Y'all dividing yourselves, not knowing that those things don't even matter. I want to bring up this map one more time, man, because it's gonna show you like the territories, right? You got the kingdom of Israel, which is the northern kingdom, and the kingdom of Judah, right? You see Samaria is right here, right? And I brought that up just to say the Samaria is in the kingdom of Israel, right? And so when you look at it, man, it's crazy to me because like it's the kingdom. You said what?
It's the capital. That's why they got that star there.
Yeah.
Right. And so here's my thing, right? When
Right
you think
there.
about Samaria is in the northern kingdom of Israelites. Let me go back, man. Let me. Where's that map? This is Samaria, right? There should be no question in Acts 10 who Cornelius is if he's living in the northern. He's a part of the northern kingdom tribes.
Yeah,
It's clear.
You can't say he's a Roman if he's living in like
he's living in the he's a northern kingdom citizen.
Yeah. Like even if the Romans came to Samaria, they would know that the Samaritans are Israelites, though. Like that's the thing.
And so when you read that he's from Caesarea, it should not even be a thing, especially with all the accounts that we brought up today with Paul, Peter, even Christ dealing with Samaritans.
I mean, we even could have went to Acts, because even Paul is referred to as a Roman, right? But we know that Paul is from the kingdom of Judah.
Right.
So people, I mean, the confusion, I understand that it can be confusing, like you mentioned, but if you really just take time to rewatch this lesson and go into all the points that the brother was bringing out, the brothers on the screen were bringing out, really, the confusion will be cleared up, because you got to understand that a lot of people can be called by certain different, I guess you could say, names when it comes to their citizenship, but primarily when you look at the land of one nativity, that's where they were really associated with.
Right. Not only that, man, if you do your history and your research, not only about territory and land and migration, but just think about all the accounts that were mentioned in the Bible. Like when you talk about the woman of Samaria at the well, when you talk about the parable of the Good Samaritan, that was literally paralleling Christ's situation with the woman, right? There's an emphasis being put on all these places and people of Samaria, right?
You know, also too, like with Cornelius, you'll ask a bunch of people, well, if he wasn't an Israelite, then what was he? They'll say he was a Roman centurion. But then you say, okay, so do you believe, like, what kind of Roman do you believe he was? Because, they'll say that, I think he was Caucasian or whatever, right? And you say, well, his hometown was Caesarea, so I mean, there's no Caucasians there. Well, he was a Samaritan. He was a Gentile. My thing is this, though. If you say he's a Samaritan, you're saying he's from the northern tribe, because the only way they got their name Samaritan is from an actual Israelite. It was Omri, which was an Israelite, and he bought the land, he bought the mountain, and he named it Shamar or Shamaria, and that's how we got the name Samaritan. Like the brother Isaiah just said, your name can come from the land that you dwell in, right? But you got to you got to get the origin of where that name for that land came from. So right. It's not going to always say, Israel, H-I-N-Z, because literally, if you look at him as a Gentile and you say, what kind of Gentile is he? He's a Samaritan. The Samaritans were Israelites.
And time after time in the Bible is leading you. I mean, it's point blank period is leading you to say that Samaritans are Israelites. Not only that, Christ is not going to be the author of confusion, because he's not going to tell you not to go into the city of the Samaritans, but he has all these dealings with the Samaritans, right? And he's letting you know, man, he's go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Go to the Israelites, right, that are being called Samaritans. But they're Israelites at the end of the day.
But that's why I say a lot of people, including myself, I always try to go back and reread the minor prophets a lot too, because sometimes, it helps you bridge the gap better, understanding like the whole Northern Kingdom aspect. Well, certain minor prophets throughout the whole Northern Kingdom. But the book of Hosea, man, is one that, a lot of people overlook and don't read, and the connection doesn't make sense. But if you go read the book of Hosea, that's why you see things like when it mentions in verse 1 and 10, where it says, and in the land where it said unto them, ye are not my people, there shall be said unto them, ye are sons of the living God. Because a lot of people don't know that, like the brother emphasized twice today in the lesson, how it was mentioned twice, how it was unlawful for a Samaritan to keep company with a Jew, right? In two different accounts, in two different chapters of the Bible, with two different people and places and situations, scenarios, settings, whatever, because a lot of people don't understand that literally the Northern Kingdom were considered like castaways, they were considered like not to be dealt with, right? Harlots, right? So you said what?
No, I was gonna let you finish.
Nah, but I was just saying that to say that that's why it's important to read, especially like the book of Hosea, because there are certain points like in the book of Romans chapter 9, like brothers always go to when we're on the street corners and we want to get something that's not too deep, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, deep enough to where they can feel where we coming from and make the connection between why certain words like Gentile, other nation, Jew, what's the difference between these words? We try to make that connection. So it's definitely, like I said, definitely a good lesson to help study with and go back and use your, I guess you could say, your study tool tips with.
Right, man. And so, man, I just want to encourage everybody, man, when y'all start reading these parables, these situations and these run-ins, right? Pay attention to the verbiage that's being used. Pay attention to the actual conversation. Don't just pay attention to the things that we pick out that, yeah, this is how I know we're Israelites, but pay attention to the conversation being had. Because I'm gonna be honest, a lot of times when I read those parables, when I read about the woman at the well, man, all that stuff was kind of going over my head about how she was making it sound glorious, like, man, this is a place that was given to our fathers, that Moses was at, and this is why that's why we worship here. But y'all say we worship over there, and all these type of conversation just goes over my head when you need the whole thing to come up with the whole big picture. And then you realize how that situation is related to a lot of situations in the Bible almost directly, right? So just pay attention to the verbiage, conversation, and the whole thing, not just the little key points that we like to pick up as, new age awakened Hebrew Israelites, if that makes sense. But with that, man, I ain't got nothing to say. If you guys got something to say, man, go ahead and say it.
Mighty lesson. What God has cleansed, call not thou common or unclean. Because where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there shall be said unto them, you are sons of the living God.
Come, man.
And just know that the New Testament took place pretty much in Israel. Whether you talking about Judeans or Samaritans, right? That both Judeans and Samaritans are both the same people, right? Galileans, uh, Nazarenes. You talking about the same people, man. It's all a family.
And I wish I had that. I wanted to bring up one more thing, man, that was interesting. Not to be long-winded. Oh, snap is right there. Hold up. Because I want to show y'all something real quick. Dang, took it off. I'll go to it straight. Um, let me present my page. I just want to show y'all real quick. It shows it, but it didn't show the both. Salakia. Where does it show it, man? Let's see.
What you looking for?
I wanted to show what was happening in Acts and point out something too, just to give people an idea what was going on. I'll use this one though. So what's happened is, right, this is Caesarea where Cornelius was. He got his vision and whatnot, and then he was sent to go to the border of Judea, which is right here in Joppa. Right now, this ended up being the kingdom of Judah later on. So when they said they was meeting at Joppa, it's really literally on the border of Judea, or the kingdom or the southern kingdom. Right? If you do your research, man, it'll tell you that a lot of the Jews didn't even like to travel through Samaria, right? They didn't even like to go this way, from this way to get to Galilee. A lot of times they'll take the long way around just to avoid the people in Samaria. So that's to show how serious it was being taken, even in this time, because he was going for Caesarea, and they were literally meeting at Joppa as like a checkpoint, like, hey, Samaritans ain't allowed over here type thing, right? And so even when you look and you do some research, I was doing some research on the whole Samaritan women at the well with Christ, right? They were in a lot of in the scripture. When you go back and examine it, it highlights the way he took to go there, right? And that was from where he was at in Jerusalem to straightway to Shechem or Sychar, right? And they put emphasis on that because a lot of people went around instead of going straight through, right? And that's to show the enmity that they had. And that's the same enmity that Christ broke in Ephesians 2 that the brother had me pull. But just wanted to bring that out. But with further ado, man, we give all honor and glory to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We are the brothers of the hopeful elect. Hope you were edified. Hope it wasn't too long-winded, man. There's a lot of information, I know, and it was a little bit longer than I expected, but it was all good, man. So Shabbat Shalom, and we'll see you guys next time. We say Shalom.